Hello, everybody. We are Pro Football and America 250, Week 6 into the season, their season, our season, all seasons. I'm Dr. Dan Miller, Historical Solutions LLC. We're looking at head coach George Washington and the Continentals football team, newly franchised, newly owned, newly onto the field outside of Boston, surrounding the British in mid-October or so, 1775. And remember, we're community owned. Front office is down in Philadelphia. That's where the owner. Well, that's not where the ownership is. That's the front office people. The owners are all up and down, kind of like the modern Green Bay Packers, community owned. But the franchise is on the field outside of Boston and a few other places. The Continentals, coached by head coach George Washington. We have got a we've got a big thing happening 250 years ago, Week 6. Let's start, though, with the NFL. Now, no, this is not going to be an all Colts podcast, but obviously a tip of the helmet and head to their success, headed to 5-1, but coming off a couple of fabulous Monday night games that I wasn't able to watch last night. So another incredible slate of games that wraps up Week 6 before we head on into the second quarter of the season. Our focus, though, from the NFL's perspective for Week 6 is going to be the Pittsburgh Steelers. And here's why. They're a little bit of a surprise on the positive side, right? They're 4-1. They're atop of the AFC Central. And I'm not sure everybody would have expected that at this point. I don't know. No, in fact, no, right? We would have thought Baltimore. But we're going to use the Pittsburgh Steelers as our example, and specifically, we're going to use the general manager, Omar Khan. We've been with the Steelers, I think, since 2022 season. So here's what I want you to envision. So we're 4-1 Steelers. We're excited, everything else, and we've got the record to justify our excitement. All of a sudden, in today's media, today's newspaper in Pittsburgh and all over everywhere else, out of nowhere comes a report, an announcement. Omar Khan is leaving the Steelers. Not only leaving the Steelers as the general manager, he's resigning, and in his resignation, he's blasting out how awful the organization is, how awful the team is, how awful the community is, how awful it all is. I'm leaving, says Omar Khan. In our scenario, it's a huge shock. Hey, Shelby, it's a huge shock, gut punch, stab in the back. It feels like for Steeler Nation and everybody else, just out of nowhere. That's what's happening to head coach George Washington 250 years ago, right now, in the as they wrap up the second week of October. The season's Week 6. Benjamin Church, Dr. Benjamin Church, a major leader of the colonial rights movement out of Boston, well-regarded, well-positioned, well-funded, well-educated, all of the wells you want, right? Benjamin Church confesses that I have been a spy all along. I have lied all along. I have passed information secretly on to the British all along. As the colonial protests have occurred, the colonial resistance has occurred, and everything else. I've tried to help the enemy. It is a shock to the system. It is a shock to the franchise, the ownership, the people, the players, the head coach. Gut punch, throat punch, knife in the back, just like we talked about. If it were to make up somebody on a positive side in a positive setting, Omar Khan with the Pittsburgh Steelers now. I love that Carolina Wren. So Washington is devastated. Head coach George Washington is devastated, and so they start to ask the questions. I've written this down. I want to be sure I get this for you. Here's the questions that we're going to start asking head coach George Washington. Do we write this off, that Church is just nasty and evil, and leave it at that? Or do we wonder, what's this say about us at this point in the season? What's it say about us? And remember who us is. In terms of a team, we're all about not just starting our own way, not just going against the opposite side. We're virtuous. Our whole organization is built on the idea of virtue, that people can govern themselves because they are virtuous. And we recognize that, we promote that. And now I got my GM, I got one of our key guys coming in here and saying we're all snakes and we're all bad and we're all everything else that's awful. Do we write it off as church is a lousy dude, or does it say anything about us? Now, I want you to remember, week 6, everything else is still going on. Everything else is still in operation. Head coach Washington has a couple of small forces headed toward Canada to try to not invade Canada, but encourage them to come to our side, and maybe an invasion is the only way to do that. We've also got the main part of the team outside of Boston. Going up against the British in a siege operation that we're not used to doing. It's not my style. I've had to come out of my comfort zone to do this. I'd rather play the game a much different, more aggressive way, but we're going to have to kind of settle in with this siege. So all of those things are still true, and then we have the general manager resign and say we're all jerks. And he's lied to us. And I wonder, are we not as virtuous as we think? Here's the question for you, players, fans, coaches, and owners, going forward. When I'm digging down into the core question, who are we? When I'm digging down into the core question, who do I talk to? Where do I go? Who do I talk to? Where do I go? When that's what I've got to find out, are those kinds of answers. Not about is the style one way or the other. Not about any of that. Not about how do I have the team throw the ball better, scheme it out better. But what are our fundamental values as to who we are? Who do I go to? Where do I go to answer that question? I'm Dan Miller. We'll see you next week, week 7. Pro Football in America 250. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. I'll talk to you soon.